Appearances can be deceiving, and often hide dark and dangerous intentions. This was confirmed by the horrifying story that shook Italy in the fall of 2020, which claimed the lives of well-known football referee Daniele De Santis and his fiancée Eleonora Manta. The crime was shocking in its brutality and puzzling due to the absence of a clear motive. When investigators revealed the identity of the killer, everyone was stunned, for behind the angelic appearance lay someone capable of unimaginable acts. Even more disturbing was the fact that the perpetrator expressed a desire to repeat his actions, driven by a perverse pleasure in harming others. Daniele De Santis was born in 1987 in the Italian city of Lecce. He was the eldest son in a close-knit and well-off family. He grew up with his two younger sisters in an environment full of trust and love. Sports played an important role in his life from an early age, and football became his greatest passion. After finishing high school, he enrolled at a prestigious Italian university and graduated in 2009. Alongside his studies, he began building a successful career as a football referee. In 2017, he started as an assistant referee and quickly advanced to become a main referee, supervising over 130 matches in the Italian Serie B and Serie C leagues. Daniele was known for his charismatic personality, athletic build, and strong presence on the field. His profession brought him financial success and a promising future, and he had big plans for his life. His personal life was also filled with happiness, especially after becoming engaged to Eleonora Manta, an attractive young woman 3 years his junior. The couple was planning to get married soon, and their life seemed perfect in every detail. Eleonora was born in Milan in 1990 and raised in a modest family. She was the youngest of 3 siblings, with 2 older twin brothers. During her early school years, her parents divorced, and her father remarried, gradually distancing himself from his children's lives, leaving their mother solely responsible for raising them. From a young age, Eleonora showed a passion for sports and dance. This shared interest was what brought her and Daniele together in 2019. Their relationship quickly evolved from a deep romance to planning their wedding. Those close to them described their relationship as ideal and harmonious, with no known conflicts and complete mutual trust. Eleonora had long dreamed of earning a law degree, and in 2020 she secured a competitive spot in a university program specializing in law and international relations. She was thrilled by the opportunity and began her studies with great enthusiasm in September of that year. After a short engagement, the couple decided to live together and chose Danielle's spacious apartment in a residential complex. At that time, Daniele was renting one of the rooms to a student who needed time to find alternative housing. Once the tenant moved out, Eleonora gradually moved her belongings into Danielle's apartment, and by September 2020, everything seemed to be going perfectly for them. Daniele was scheduled to officiate a Coppa Italia match between Monopoli and Modena on September 23. Unfortunately, he would not live to see that day. On the evening of September 21, while the couple was celebrating Eleonora's move with a quiet romantic dinner at Danielle's apartment, everything turned into a terrifying nightmare. At around 9:30 p.m., the calm was shattered by a horrifying scream for help, followed by the sounds of a violent struggle. Alarmed, neighbors reported hearing ongoing noise for nearly 10 minutes. During this short time, emergency services received about 12 calls, with several callers describing sounds suggesting someone was being attacked. No one realized at the time just how accurate and terrifying their suspicions were. Shortly after 10 p.m., a 12-year-old boy walking his dog across the street witnessed a scene that would haunt him forever. He heard the screaming but didn't understand what was happening, until he saw a young man rushing out of the residential complex. The attacker paused briefly, then approached the boy. The child later described the man's cold, expressionless face and the knife in his hand. Frozen with fear, the boy stood motionless, uncertain of what would happen. Fortunately, some passers-by appeared, prompting the attacker to flee. Although he tried to hide his face, several witnesses saw him clearly before he disappeared into the darkness. Police and emergency vehicles arrived at the scene shortly afterward, but unfortunately, there was nothing that could be done to save Daniele or Eleonora. Daniele was found lying on his back in the stairwell, surrounded by a large pool of blood and unconscious. The apartment door was wide open, and inside, Eleonora's body was found face down in the hallway, her clothes and hair soaked in blood. The cause of death was clear: multiple stab wounds and severe bleeding. Forensic experts counted 38 stab wounds on Danielle's body and 37 on Eleonora's. The excessive level of violence raised disturbing questions. Who could commit such a brutal attack, and why target them in this horrific way? Initially, investigators considered the possibility of a botched robbery. Daniele was a well-known public figure, and his financial success wasn't a secret. It seemed plausible that someone might have broken into the apartment expecting to find valuables, only to encounter the couple at home at the worst possible moment. However, the robbery theory was quickly ruled out, as nothing valuable was taken from the apartment. Cash left in plain sight remained untouched. Moreover, Eleonora was wearing a set of expensive jewelry, earrings, a necklace, and a diamond ring Daniele had given her during their engagement, all of which were left untouched. What caught investigators' attention was the unusually extreme level of violence. The way the victims were stabbed suggested a personal motive and deep hatred. This led to speculation that the crime might have been driven by jealousy, perhaps by a spurned lover or someone seeking revenge. Investigators explored the possibility of a love triangle, thinking that one of the victims might have been involved in a relationship that led to this act of violence. However, this theory was quickly dismissed, as Daniele and Eleonora were deeply in love, and everyone who knew them confirmed that neither was the type to cheat. Still, the possibility remained that someone harbored unreciprocated feelings toward one of them. At the crime scene, several strange items were found that didn't belong to the victims, including plastic ties, a bottle of bleach, and a blood-stained sock. These items were scattered around the room, indicating the killer had brought them. Forensic analysis later revealed that the sock contained traces of Danielle's blood and the DNA of an unidentified man. It appeared the attacker had used the sock as a mask to cover his face, which Daniele may have ripped off during the struggle. The sock bore a disturbing detail: a drawn face, like a mask, sketched in black marker. Eyewitnesses provided enough information to create a composite sketch of the suspect. The most detailed account came from the boy walking his dog, who had seen the attacker face to face. Due to the child's fear and the fact that the incident occurred at night, there were concerns about the accuracy of his description. However, the boy provided a detailed account of the man's clothing and the bag he was carrying. While questioning the witnesses, some recalled hearing Eleonora repeatedly begging the attacker to stop, screaming a name that sounded like Andrea multiple times. This was the first significant lead in the investigation. Detectives began carefully looking into every man named Andrea connected to the couple's lives, hoping it would lead them to the truth. The first suspect was Andrea Formativi, an old acquaintance of Eleonora from her teenage years. Although they lived in different cities and rarely communicated, they still followed each other on social media. Investigators theorized that Formativi had been obsessed with Eleonora since their youth and, upon learning of her engagement, acted out of jealousy. "If I can't have her, no one will." Formativi was soon located and was shocked by the news of Eleonora's death, even more so when he found himself a suspect. However, he was quickly cleared. On the night of the crime, he was on a business trip in Rome, which was confirmed by multiple witnesses and surveillance footage. The next suspect was Andrea Martinelli, a close friend. Investigators believed he might have harbored secret feelings for Eleonora and resented Daniele because of it. Phone records showed that the two men had spoken just 3 hours before the crime. However, Martinelli also had a solid alibi, supported by several individuals. After ruling out close friends, attention shifted to a 30-year-old man named Andrea Ruto, who had a recent acquaintance with the couple and bore a striking resemblance to the composite sketch. He was arrested and presented to the witnesses, but all unanimously confirmed that the man they saw on the night of the crime was someone else. His alibi was also confirmed with strong evidence, and he was released. With no other suspects named Andrea in the couple's social circle, the investigation hit a dead end. Detectives began to question whether Eleonora might have screamed a different name during the attack, which meant the time spent investigating men named Andrea might have been wasted. It became urgent to find new evidence to move the case forward. During a second search of the crime scene, police discovered a crucial piece of evidence initially overlooked: a folded piece of paper found under a small shoe rack. It appeared to have been dropped by the attacker. The paper, torn from a notebook similar to those used by students, contained a hastily written sequence of steps, a detailed action plan to enter the apartment and commit the crime. The written instructions included a clear plan to restrain the couple using the plastic ties found at the crime scene. It was evident that the attacker had meticulously planned to bind and harm the victims using materials he brought with him. This discovery revealed the organized nature of the crime and reignited the investigation, now focused on identifying the methodical killer. For unknown reasons, the attacker had abandoned the more brutal parts of the plan, likely due to the intense resistance from the couple and the loud screams and commotion heard by many neighbors, which made the attacker fear being caught. The note also revealed that the attacker had spent time surveilling the apartment, walking near the windows and listening at the door to ensure the couple was alone and had no guests. It included other details such as disguising himself with a sock, changing clothes after the crime, and using bleach to erase evidence. At the bottom of the page was a hand-drawn map of the neighborhood where the victims lived, marking all the exterior surveillance cameras on buildings and utility poles, along with several escape routes that avoided these cameras. Despite this meticulous planning, the attacker ignored these precautions during his escape. The composite sketch of the suspect was circulated widely on television and in newspapers for several days, but no solid leads emerged until September 26. On that day, a young man walked into a police station and reported that the sketch strongly resembled a fellow student, a 21-year-old medical student named Antonio DeMarco. What caught investigators' attention was that Antonio had not attended classes or contacted anyone at the university for several days following the crime. It soon became clear that Antonio had previously rented a room in Daniele De Santis' apartment, but had moved out a few months earlier. He was not initially considered a suspect since he no longer lived there. Antonio was described as a quiet and unremarkable individual who avoided conflict and focused solely on his studies. Many residents of the building didn't even remember Daniele ever having rented out a room. Those who knew Antonio spoke positively of him. He was diligent, polite, and rarely interacted with others. He didn't attend social gatherings or parties and had no known romantic relationships. To most people, he seemed like a model student deeply immersed in his studies. Police quickly obtained handwriting samples from Antonio's university records to compare with the note found at the crime scene. Forensic analysis confirmed a perfect match, leaving no doubt that police had identified the perpetrator of the horrific act. No one knew exactly where Antonio had moved after leaving Danielle's apartment, but investigators tracked down his mother, who provided his current address. He was renting a room in a shared house with 2 other students just 3 blocks from the crime scene. The lease was in another student's name, and the rent was split among the 3. On September 28, 2020, just a week after the tragic events, Antonio DeMarco was arrested outside a comic book store, where he was buying a magazine. When approached by officers, he showed no surprise and did not attempt to resist or flee. Instead, he gave a twisted smile and asked, "What took you so long to find me?" From the beginning, Antonio did not deny his involvement in the crime. He showed no emotion or remorse and answered investigators' questions with cold, detached detail. He even seemed to enjoy recounting the events of that night. He remembered seeing the young boy walking his dog and admitted he had considered killing him too, but was in a hurry and realized that the presence of other people in the area would complicate things. Antonio's cold demeanor and lack of remorse stood in stark contrast to his angelic appearance and the glowing reports from his university and the hospital where he was training as a medical intern. Though known to be shy, he was described as a promising and dedicated young doctor. Investigators decided to delve deeper into Antonio's past to understand more. They turned to his mother for answers. She had raised him alone, and he was her only child, the center of her love and attention. She was deeply shocked by the charges against him. During questioning, she admitted that her son had always been different. As a child, he struggled to connect with others, avoided making friends, and preferred solitude. During adolescence, his introversion intensified. He spent hours in his room drawing or working on projects and would react aggressively if interrupted. Concerned, his mother took him to a specialist, and Antonio was diagnosed with multiple psychological disorders and social communication problems. Despite these challenges, he excelled academically, particularly in subjects like mathematics and science were Antonio's strengths, which helped him secure a place in medical school. However, he suffered from panic attacks and gradually withdrew into a fantasy world of comic books, drifting further from reality. His psychiatrist prescribed medication to help manage his condition, but according to his mother, Antonio often failed to stick to the prescribed doses. He would sometimes ignore his medication for weeks, then take dangerously high doses all at once. His psychiatrist had also recommended keeping a personal journal as an outlet for his thoughts and emotions, since he struggled to express them to others. His mother later handed these journals over to the investigators. At first, Antonio's writings were relatively normal. He wrote about his desire to live a normal life, to make friends, to experience love and marriage, and to feel a sense of belonging in society. But he struggled with social interaction and was unsure how to deal with people. During his university years, Antonio lived with his mother until he found a reasonably priced room for rent. Danielle's apartment was close to the university, so Antonio quickly contacted the landlord and proved to be a quiet tenant who paid rent on time and caused no issues. According to his journal, Antonio seemed to view Daniele as a close friend during that time. But things changed when Eleonora entered the picture and Daniele began spending all his time with her. Eleonora also frequently visited Daniele at the apartment. When the couple decided to live together permanently, Daniele politely asked Antonio to move out and find another place. However, Antonio took this request as a deep personal insult, and as the loss of his closest friend. Still, he didn't show this to Daniele. Instead, he claimed he had already been planning to move somewhere closer to the hospital where he was training. Daniele gave him ample time to relocate and didn't even ask for rent for that period. But the longer Antonio stayed, the more his resentment toward the couple grew, turning into hatred. Antonio's journal began to take a darker turn. He started writing disturbingly detailed ideas about different ways to harm the couple, even describing methods of torture he imagined. In court, he later claimed these writings were only a way to vent his anger and keep himself from acting on it. But his fantasies grew more intense, evolving into a carefully constructed plan. After moving out, Antonio's journal entries became more systematic. He wrote step-by-step instructions on what he intended to do to Daniele and Eleonora. As part of his plan, he secretly made a duplicate key to the apartment before moving out. His writings revealed an intense hatred toward the couple and a desire to see them suffer a slow and painful death, despite having no clear reason for this rage in the end. When asked why he developed such hatred for Daniele and Eleonora that he wanted them dead, Antonio calmly replied, "They were too happy. That made me very angry." He also admitted that he had intended to torture his victims, but things didn't go according to his plan. During the trial, the prosecution brought up a strange drawing, a sad face, on the sock Antonio had used as a mask. When asked about its meaning, he explained that he had intended to leave the same symbol drawn in the victim's blood on the apartment wall as a kind of signature. He even confessed that he had considered using the symbol in future crimes, openly declaring that he would have committed another murder because he enjoyed taking lives. Finally, on June 7, 2021, Antonio DeMarco was convicted of double premeditated murder. And that brings us to the end of today's story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories. Thank you, and until next time, stay safe and well.